think back to your first college class. You have a new pen, a clean notebook, and a stylish new outfit. You're nervous. You've heard a lot about college, but you're not quite sure what to expect. And then I walk into the room and you realize I'm your professor. Look at me. What class are you in? English? Political science? Communications? Look at me. Would you ever think I'm your professor for a class in Islam? I never thought about the disconnect between what I look like and what I teach until my very first class at Georgetown University. As I walked across the room, I overheard a student whisper, "Who is that? Is that our professor? She's blonde and she's white." I couldn't believe that the student said that, and then said it loud enough for me to overhear. I knew what he meant, of course. I look like him, a Christian, not a Muslim that the media portrays as a terrorist. In a way, the student is right. I am like him. I am white. I am blonde. I am a Christian. But I'm also a sister, a daughter, a born and raised Kentuckian with a love of sweet tea and the Kentucky Derby. And for some of those reasons, I'm a lot like many of you in this room right now. Maybe not the sweet tea part. But it's because of what I look like that people are often surprised when they learn that I study Islam. At the end of the semester, the student came back to me and apologized for his comment. He admitted that it stemmed from two fears. First, if I looked like him and I didn't hate Muslims, did that mean that my class would undermine his faith? Second, as a Christian, didn't that mean that Muslims were his enemy? It is precisely these reasons, these walls between us, that motivate me to talk with people and explain that if we can build bridges together, we actually strengthen our faiths and create stronger communities. But should we dare to do that? To be daring means to take a risk, not knowing what the outcome is going to be. Standing in front of the wall, staring it down, picking up the sledgehammer, and shattering it. I was anything but daring in college. Until the first day of my sophomore year, September 11th, 2001. I realized I would need to get a lot smarter about Islam in the days that followed. A friend of mine walked into my room and she said, "I hope that George Bush finds whoever did this, kills them, and everyone that practices their religion." I knew that her words came from the fact that she had lost an aunt when the South Tower collapsed. But I was really uncomfortable. At 19, I had never met a Muslim. I had only ever experienced Christianity, but her words degraded all Muslims, not the actions of a few people, and that was not okay with me. So I did the only thing that I knew how to do. I enrolled in a class on the Introduction to Islam. I was pretty convinced that after I read 1,655 pages or so, took 2 exams, and wrote a 25-page independent research paper, I would have all of the answers to 9/11. I was wrong. Instead of talking about 9/11, we read the Quran. Instead of thinking about terrorism, we went to a mosque where I stood in awe as I watched Muslims in my community bow in prayer before God. I found comfort in hearing them talk about God in the names that I knew, the most merciful, the most compassionate. And it was then that I realized I had taken this class for all of the wrong reasons. I had come in thinking that if I could just study Islam, I could say this if you just fix this, you could end all terrorism committed in the name of Islam. I was wrong. I was wrong because I ignored the political realities that made people think they didn't have another option but to take up arms. I was wrong because I overlooked the fact that more than 1 billion people around the world were grieving because their religion, not just airplanes, were hijacked that day. I was wrong. These insights into myself and a newly found love of the study of religion gave me the courage to change my path. Instead of going to law school, I decided to get a PhD in religion. My parents were thrilled. I also decided to dedicate my life to building bridges between Muslims and Christians. Will you dare to walk with me on 2 of those today? The first bridge is a bridge of action. Calls to social justice from within Christianity and Islam pave the way on this bridge. Jesus invites Christians to walk on this path when he asks us to clothe the naked and to feed the hungry. God calls Muslims to this bridge by telling them to be steadfast maintainers of justice. And when we walk together on this bridge, serving soup at homeless shelters or building affordable housing, we learn that our religious traditions inspire us to do good in the world. We have common ground. We are friends, not enemies. Students here at Valparaiso University learned this firsthand 2 years ago. SALT, the Social Action Leadership Team, partnered with a group in Afghanistan to raise $25,000 to help 400 Muslim children get prosthetic limbs. But the SALT students were hesitant. They feared being called hypocrites because the US government purchased and in many cases dropped the very bombs that harmed those children. They feared that their donors, who were Christian, would not give money to their cause. And they feared failure. For the first time in its 30-year history, SALT had partnered with a non-Christian group, the MSA, or the Muslim Student Association, to fundraise for this project. The SALT students feared that if they didn't succeed, they would fail Muslims in this community. But they need not have worried. Together, SALT and MSA raised $40,000 and helped 640 children. They shattered their goal. The SALT students also got to experience true zakah, almsgiving, which Muslims around the world practice daily. Humbled, they watched as Muslims in our community gave generously of their time and their energy and their resources to help this campaign succeed. Inspired, they went back to their churches to mine the Christian tradition, to understand what Christianity had to say about service, social justice, and love of neighbor. Through the partnership, they strengthened their faith. They also learned that when you walk across the bridge of action, you find yourself walking across a second bridge, the bridge of dialogue. I know what you're thinking. Talk? You just want me to talk. That's really easy, right? On the bridge of dialogue, we risk way more than words. We risk a prized possession, our faith. Under the magnifying glass of someone else's religious truths and experiences, we see ourselves for who we are, at our very best, and we cringe when we look at who we are at our very worst. Dialogue demands daring. I learned this firsthand in Lebanon, the country, not Indiana, in 2011, when I participated in an international interfaith dialogue with Muslims and Christians. It was hard to listen as Muslims told me that God was one, not three, as I had always been taught. It was even harder to listen when Muslims from Nigeria explained that they had been denied jobs because of their faith by Christians like me. But the hardest part came when the imam, a Muslim prayer leader, asked me to pray that Muslims would do good in this world, that they would worship God, and that they would share their faith with Christians. He dared me. He dared me to pray that God would look favorably upon our religious differences. He dared me to keep walking on this bridge of dialogue, even though it wasn't easy, and even though I was really uncomfortable at times. And it was then that I realized the real dare of dialogue. In the process of listening, in sitting with, and encountering someone else, I am the one that is changed. I am the one that grows in new ways. I have the power and the privilege to decide how I want to act in relationship to people of faith or no faith at all. You have that same opportunity. We could choose to build walls, much like my former student who was afraid that if he took my class and learned about another religious tradition, he would erase his own faith. Or we can build bridges. We can walk in the footsteps of those students here at Valparaiso University who together changed the lives of hundreds of people. What fear holds you back? What keeps you from building bridges of interfaith? Be bold. I dare you to walk with us on these bridges. Thank you.